Well, hey YouTube, I'm going to be talking about Class D amps again. So this is a post from a pedal forum. Easy Class D amp and cab simulating. Easy Class D amp / amp and cab sim modeling fiasco. So this is my post, long rambling post from not very bright person. I realize there are very hard-working folks out there who have done amazing things with technology in DIY. This is not me. What can I say? I've done a lot of things and I've learned very little, but I have improved the overall quality slightly and come to some realizations of what does not work so well, while taking the path of least resistance, plug and play type applications rather than genuine DIY or circuit design. I must stress how much of a hack that I am now to avoid further character assassination. This has always been my thing. I never said I was a brilliant electrical engineer. I always said I was a hack, because that's what I am. I just try to be neat. I don't use electrical tape. I use plumber's flux. That's my style, what can I say? So I've been blindly tinkering with Class D amp boards, and I thought perhaps this info may be useful to someone. It's not a modeling debate. I'm not claiming to be a tone god to state or argue that Class D is good or better than a tube amp. It's a solution for me. I'm not boasting. I'm not bragging. This is a report of my findings after 10 years of tinkering with these cheap Chinese amp boards. First and foremost, of course, this is not a traditional guitar amp. This is more of a powered speaker type of idea. Now, the closest I ever got to imitating the idea of an actual guitar amp, I'd recommend the following: a TPA 3116 mono 100 watt board. These are $5 amp boards from eBay, completely assembled. The Runoff Groove Tone Mender, built as a preamp. That's got bass, mid-range, volume, bass, mid-range, treble, gain, and volume. So yeah, the amp board, the Tone Mender preamp, you use a 3 amp fuse. It will run anywhere from 9 volt to 24 volt DC power supply. Larger gauge power input wire, keep those short, and same for the speaker wire. And then I give a URL where you can get this amp board. TPA 3116 amp boards will often sport an input attenuator trimmer. So this is a little pot on the board that you can adjust your input volume on. I will desolder this. What I like to do is snip them into 3 pieces with a side cutter first, remove the top, and then use a pliers or needle nose and remove individual 3 pins. This keeps it really neat when you're desoldering, and it reduces the risk of you lifting a trace quite a bit. So at that point, I will solder in 3 wires and substitute in a 100K A or logarithmic input volume potentiometer. With the Tone Mender circuit in front, you end up with a clean pedal platform type of amplifier. I have one of these built into an old computer VGA switch box. It's a little tan box with a knob on it. You see that amp over there, honey? It's got a chrome handle on the top, and it does well with pedals or with a modeling device front end. It will run on whatever DC I throw at it between 9 and 24 volts. You can run that amp on 9 volts on a 9 volt battery, and it's surprisingly loud. My application is outdoor, which translates there is no AC power available. This means I need a battery. I need a battery powered front end. No AC. This means no PC computer. No anything that needs AC plug. I need a battery or DC powered preamp. And that's what that's all about, is building these Class D amps. You're not building something with a gain knob where it's going to get dirty, where you think of like a 5150, like these high gain amps where you don't need a pedal. This is a totally clean sounding amp. It doesn't distort. That's the problem. Now, it's not really a problem because you can just throw a modeling device in front of it. You know, I mean, it's a compromise. It doesn't sound as good, but if you need like 100 watts for $5, you can get it. You know, and it's, for me, it isn't. I mean, like, I've got amps here. I've got solids, like really loud solid state amps, 2x12 combos. I got a JC120, and then I've got tube amps here. I've got some like vintage, old, really nice tube stuff. I've got tube recording gear. I got a pair of monoblock 7.5 watt, beautiful tube amp, stereo pair. But you can't plug those into a tree, and that's where I play. I play in the wilderness, so. I choose a Zoom G3, not the new one, the G3N, the older one, firmware version 2, which is really important. So of course this isn't going to be better than a tube amp. It's not a tone machine. It's loud, it does the job. There is much variety in the sounds because programming my own patches via the software is a must. Any decent amp modeling device will work. Even an old RP50 is better than nothing. But really, you know, like I said, that old Digitech stuff is alright, but we're going to want to try to invest a little bit of, this is where you gotta pay to get the better tone. So you can look at the new Hotone Ampero, Hot Tone, however you pronounce that. Moore has some new stuff that looks interesting. And indoors with the AC plug, you could get a Helix, you could get a Kemper, you could get an Axe Effects if you can afford it. And then the other idea is using software, something like Amplitude. Bias software is very popular right now. Guitar Rig or TH3. There's all kinds of guitar software you can use. Points of interest. The mono 100 watt TPA 3116 will run on a 9-volt battery with no compromise in sound. They're rated at 12 volts, but you can run them off a 9-volt battery and it'll run just no problem. This did not make sense to me when I read it, but through testing I found it to be oath, truth, inescapable. I don't have a link, so forgive my ineptitude, but when you amp model or cabinet simulate, which is what I choose as it's more versatile and I think better sounding choice than trying to turn a Class D amp into a traditional amp with building your own circuitry in front of it, or running pedals. I find that I get better tone using this modeling, but there's a lot of drawbacks with that, and I'll address that later. This is better tone in the final, like what the audience is going to hear. Okay, me, I lose all the feel. It's totally different. It doesn't sound like Amp in the Room. It sounds like a mastered album. There's a different to the sound, but I find it mixes well with a bass and a drum type of thing. And I mean, let's face it, I'm not using a real drummer. I'm using loops. So this is really an odd type of thing. This is much more for a bedroom guy than a pro, like, band, like professional musician. You know, because I'm just a guy who loves to make music. I quit playing in bands. I vowed to myself I would never do that. I used to play bass for 15 years in bands. So it didn't make sense to me when I first read this, but when you amp model or cab sim, you have to have a full range speaker with a proper tweeter to supply high frequencies required to make amp and cab modeling sound real. Again, it doesn't make sense. All of the great guitar amps, they don't have tweeters, so why would you need one to copy it? Well, this is what I read. And after playing around, filming live performances, editing them, listening, I knew what the sound was. Then playing around with adding tweeters, and then playing through proper studio monitors, which is full range, and full range PA speakers, I saw the light. It's a fact, and perhaps this is one of the reasons a lot of guitar players hate on digital. They bought some modeling device, plugged it into their amp or stack, and the sound is lacking. So ultimately, what we play through does not define us as musicians. Yes, these modelers have settlings like going into the front of a combo or stack input, but when you line in them and run them through a proper full range setup, this is where these devices perform as they were designed to. So it's the fault of the manufacturers for acting like, oh, you can just plug this into your amp, set the setting, and you're ready to. You can, but it's not going to sound half as good as if you do it the way it was designed to do, with a power amp and a full range speaker. And gee, that sounds a lot like these contraptions you can build with a Class D power amp board. See, it's pretty easy. And then that makes it simple. You don't have to worry about building a tone bender. You can just get a hi-fi style EQ, and they sell those, but more on that later. The typical face in the crowd, Joe, Jane, music consumer. Well, no one ever thought to themselves, that turkey is modeling, dun dun dun, or wowee, that guitar player is hot, I bet he rolls tubes. No one ever thought this besides another guitar player, and unfortunately, I feel this sums up kind of what's going through a lot of the less creative type guitar players' heads when they're online and they see somebody talking about using a modeler. This full, like, you're not a legitimate player because you use a Line 6, which it doesn't define you. What defines you is your music. That's it. Your voice on the guitar. I mean, come on. It doesn't matter what you play through. You could have some kid that grew up in the gutter that couldn't afford it, and he's going to make that guitar cry and sing. Doesn't matter what you play through. They say tones all in the fingers. Well, you could take that kid and put him in the studio with some real good gear, and man, there would be a significant. So it's a balance. Now, the full range speaker realization led me to experimenting with trying to add tweeters with a crossover to a proper 12-inch 8-ohm guitar speaker. And I have to say, yes, this hackish solution works better than with no tweeter, depending on the choice of tweeter. Perhaps you want to implement a real compression type horn, not the piezo stuff. I feel ideally the full range speaker solution is the superior choice for better tone performance. Yes, for me, this is the way to go. If you choose amp modeling for your front end, it's going to lack the amp in the room sound. Feel, forget about it. Your feel is going to disappear. But you can always add some kind of a pedal for some sag feel. And at the end of the day, it's more of a mastered album sound, which mixes well in a trio format with some bass, drum, and then your guitar. So it's kind of give or take, It's really controllable. You don't have to crank it to get that volume. And it sounds like a mastered album. It's got the nice reverb and delay on it and all that. Everything's in one device. You program these presets, and it's convenient. Now, this is also the fact that we're using mastered MP3s of drum loops, which makes it all really easy to mix and sound where it sounds, So I find it to be a very workable, and not so much a compromise for the final product, using the full range speaker setup. Before that, it wasn't as good. And you can hear for yourself, there's a short montage of several outdoor performances on this channel. 16 ohm speaker lows are not recommended for Class D amp boards. These amp boards are looking for 4 to 6 ohms or 8. And we'll work on 8, but it's going to be less power. Ideally, like I said, 6 or 8. It'll even run on 2 ohms, I believe. But 16, it can't handle it. It will not work. So there are $5, maybe $6 power supplies. They're 24 volt 2 amp with a knob on it, so you could turn that down, and that would reduce your power and your current. Untested but cheap, and those will work. $5 will get you in. 2 amp, 24 volts 2 amp is going to be loud, but ideally you're going to want 5 or 10 amp would be the best. 24 volt 10 amp. Now I've recycled laptop power packs and gotten 18 lithium ion 18650 cells. These are these batteries that look like this. This is what's in a Tesla. They look like this. I've got some tape on this one to denote where the positive side is. But yeah, they're pretty big batteries, and then I've got a bunch of chargers here. Here's one of the chargers that I use, smart charger. So collect those. You can buy them, but they work really well for powering these things. You can get these carriages that'll hold 3. So a 3 carriage brings you up to 12 volts. So you take 2 of those, and wire them together in series, and you get 24 volts. Then you take another set of 2 of those and wire those in parallel, and that just gives you a longer, more current. So the batteries will last twice as long. And that will run from noon till dark. It'll start, when it's dark, it's going to start, you're going to notice time to change the batteries. But you can get good 9 hours out of it, I'll say. And that's with it cranked. Or, it's not cranked. I don't crank them. I run them probably at about 50%, and it's way more than enough. So that's wonderful to be able to recycle those 18650s. I've gotten a lot of them. But I've been doing this for 10 years. When I got these sealed lead acid batteries, 12 volt, 7 milliamp hours, I use a pair of those in like a box with a light switch on it, and that'll be fused. Always fuse everything. You put a fuse right at the point inside of the thing, the battery holder. Have a fuse right there by the source of the terminal. So I got lucky and I got an e-bike, like a pedal bike, but it's got a motor, e-bike, electronic bike, huge battery pack, $500 retail price, $495 retail price for this battery. Paid $5 for it at a resale. It's a large lithium-ion solution that powers my DIY powered mixer, which is really cool. That's when I switched over to just using 3 speakers, a 2.1, like a sub and a right and a left. So it's 2 8-inch mains with compression driver horns. That means they're not piezo. Piezo is kind of cheap. It's a really good treble horn, And then there's a bass bin, which is a Galen Kruger Neo 2x10. There's 2 10-inch speakers. And it's kind of lightweight. It's kind of a big speaker cabinet, but that allows the bass guitar to really do its thing, and then the drums, the MP3, the kick, and all that, the backing tracks. So the powered mixer is a mono-price 12-volt 8-channel mini mixer we got used, sitting on a housing with a 2.1 Class D TPA 3116, which is a bridged pair at 100 watt for the sub, and then a 50x2 for the mains. So this board has a mains volume and tone, and then a sub frequency and sub volume with a master volume. So I built an MP3 player in there with a foot switch to start and stop the drum loops. The songs have 4 counts, and we put that on a memory card. So this system can be set up. It's one box. The powering for itself, except the power amp, is all internal. So it's got batteries for the mixer and the MP3 player and whatever else is in there. And then there's an external battery for the power amp. So you throw this box down, plug the power amp battery in, plug in the right main speaker, the left main speaker, and the sub main speaker. Then there's one input from my wife's bass multi-effector, and then that goes, she has a cable. And then I have a G3, and there's one input for that, and that's it. The whole rig is set up. So it's really cool. And we've got lithium-ion battery packs to run our pedals. So it's a little thing, and plug it in, and there you go. It's really cool compared to how much stuff we used to bring, So I'm proud of myself because I started doing this in 2010, and I'm not going to be ashamed and act like I'm scared somebody's going to watch this and say that I'm boasting, because I'm not. It was an unbelievable amount of work, and you know what? When you do work that hard at something, you're allowed to be proud of yourself. That's just, you can say I'm gloating and that I'm bragging that I'm this big electronics genius and all that, but it couldn't be further from the truth. There's people out. Joker X, for example, is a guy that designs circuits, real front ends for these things, and I admire that guy. He's a real pedal builder. He's a guy that knows his stuff. Me, I'm paint by number. I've merely ordered these things and put them together, pretty much. And I've built a lot of pedals. I've built a lot of circuits. I don't do them all on PCB. I do them on Vero. I've designed my own fuzz circuit. I know about electronics, but what I'm doing here is much more kind of the easiest way out. So I have to say this new system sounds better than anything else I built going back to 2010 with a full band rig full of Class D stuff I built into a bunch of individual cabinets. Nothing smaller than 12-inch speakers. So dual 12-inch bass cabinets, 15 three-way PA speakers for the drum machine, 12-inch speakers with horns. There's a pair of those for the keyboard. Gauss 2148 pair for the lead guitar. Similar mono 12 for the rhythm. So I was kind of really thrilled at this stripped down rig with these two little 8-inch PA speakers with compression drivers and this bass bin. Sounds as good as it does. It sounds excellent. I have to say, I think we sound a little bit better. I know the guitar does. The modeling thing, if you're using full range, it makes a difference. That's the main difference, is my guitar has this definition to it that I just didn't get using a guitar speaker with a horn or just a guitar speaker. So it's crazy. Full range is apparently the answer to making amp modeling sing. Despite the manufacturers pretending that it's all good when you run a 3-year amp, it isn't. Trust me. Yes, I've tried a lot of the smaller amp boards available on eBay. At this point, I've chosen to go strictly with the 3116 stuff as its overall value. The 7498 is great. That's the chip number. The fancy Shure brand stuff, the $50, $65 ones with the built-in fan, we've got that stuff here and it's great. But honestly, I can't discern a noticeable difference. So paying $5 for the board as opposed to 35 or 55, yes please. Often I would build booster circuits as needed for the front end. They warn about overdriving the input of these Class D amp boards, but often if I was using headphone type output levels, see, there was an Apple lawsuit where they reduced the output level because they said people's ears were getting damaged. So in those cases, if I was using some quieter devices, I found that I really needed that boost. So you can push these amps a bit when you need to, but you really have to watch it and don't get silly. You got to know what you're doing. So a pair of NPN transistor small E type circuits for the guitar. You build 2 of them, wire it to a stereo potentiometer, and that's your gain control. Or even use the bass guitar EQ harness type circuits on eBay that are like $9. Like you're going to pull your electronics out, and then this is a box with a 9-volt battery, and you turn it into an active preamp system for your bass. You can get those for $9 a piece and wire them up in stereo, where you eliminate each pot and sub in a stereo pot and use 2 units. So this set of 3 wires from the treble pot from your right unit, this set of 3 wires from your treble from your left unit onto 1 stereo pot, and then you have your treble for your stereo. Because I build a lot of stereo amps because the multi-effectors are stereo, and I want to have a nice spread. Use 2 speakers, why not? You know, making it a little bit more complicated, but that's just what I've been doing. You very well could do it mono. They have the same boards at mono. You can get a 50 by 50 or you can get 100. So there you go. If you look, eBay sells these full range, meaning like the NPN boost is more guitar frequencies maybe, but you can get these full range stereo boost preamp boards very cheaply. They're like $1.25, a little tiny board with an in, an out, and a voltage. And they'll run up to like 36 volts. So it's very handy, and then you're running it at high headroom, you know. If your amp runs at 24 volts, you don't have to use like a 7809 voltage regulator to bust it down to 9 volts. You can just go ahead and run right off a hot 24. And so it's advantageous, but you can substitute voltage regulators to pad out your voltages if need be. You can look for LM1036 brand EQ, or the LM1036 EQ is what you'll type into eBay to get EQs that will be powered off of DC. A lot of the EQs that they sell, if you don't want to build a front end, you can just buy this little EQ circuit, and it comes pre-wired. You just drill the holes and install it and run the wires, and you're good to go. The LM1036 ones are DC. Okay, because again, we're going back to that no AC concept, because I play outdoors. So you can find those 1036 EQs in 2 and 3 band varieties. They're not cheap. Some of them are like $7-8, but then they go up to like 20. And you can slap those on the front end. But if you're doing this for guitar, I would recommend you build that runoff groove tone bender. That's an EQ that's sculpted to mimic. You can mimic a Fender amp, a Vox amp, or a Marshall with it. It just sounds really good with a guitar. But it depends on your design requirements, what you're going to be playing through this Class D amp, you know. And if you don't want to build a tone mender, well then buy one of these hi-fi EQs and put it in there. It'll work. They're just different frequency spectrums for the controls, and the tone mender is sculpted for guitar, so it works really well. You get somebody to make you a tone mender. How about that? Regardless of what you may have heard about the fragility of these boards, like people slamming them on the input and they smoke, we've only lost one board, and I was not present. I was in the outhouse when that happened. Somebody powered it up, and we don't got any power, and I'm clueless what happened, but they're very robust. If you knew how many of these amps I've made a lot of them. And the fact that only one of them blew, and we really used them. Like, we went out every weekend. We would go out one day and play all day into the night. At least 9 hours a day, and that was summer, spring, and fall. Anytime the weather permitted, we would be out doing it. So I find these boards dependable and so affordable that I'm building about an amp or two every year now, which I find much more rewarding than pedals. No offense, I still build pedals, but with these amp building, it's like you're kind of improvising on the chassis, or you'll find something you're going to convert, and it's just a really fun project, you know. And it's been a learning experience for me. I've improved a little bit over the years, and I still build pedals, but I'm thinking with this mini mixer rig I'm about set now. So if you want to hear the Class D powered mixer, the mini thing that I built, there is a video. You know, I've got fireside chat, Class D amp, 100 watt powered speaker, slideshow. There's like 4 videos on my channel about this, like real specific stuff, showing gut shots and how I build them. There's a new video of the band ktel presents. Petey Twofinger ktel presents. That's like 6 minutes worth of edited video from us playing this year through that new rig, the new Class D rig, where it's full range. You can hear the tone. And then, like, if you're on this channel, or you go back, you can find all kinds of whenever you see me and my wife outdoors, that's all Class D battery amp stuff. So you could go back, and you might even be able to hear the difference through the camera and the crappy YouTube compression. You can hear that it sounds better when I'm using this new setup with the full range speaker, rather than a traditional, like a Fender 12-inch guitar speaker in a cabinet. Or I've got a EV 12-inch that we've used in a real nice big cabinet. So that was the, a half-hour talk on Class D amps, everything I've learned in the last 10 years. I tried to go through it as quickly as I can. You know, I'm willing to help. I'm not very good at this stuff. You'd be better off, there's amp forums where you could talk to people. I'm not really the guy that's going to be able to help. There's some really brilliant people out there that are really good at this stuff. So, but I'm willing to help whatever I can. So enjoy, good luck, and peace.